There we go. And we're going to mute everybody.
Is that him?
All right. Welcome everybody to July's member meeting. I'm happy that you're all here. And as you know, my name is Dawn Kovalevsky and I'm the president of PPF. I think everybody knows me here. I don't see any new people. So you get my name again. So anyway, so we're going to start on some announcements. As you know that we've been accepting submissions to the Blue Sky Library wall for the October exhibition. A reminder of the details will be sent out tomorrow by email, and the deadline is August 1st at midnight. If there are submissions in excess of 626, there will be a blind judging by the board members. We will have mats and sleeves available for you that they are in size 11 by 14 with an 8 by 10 inset. If you have a different size that you want in there, then you'll have to cut your own mat, but it does need to be 11 by 14. And then Walter, I understand that you have heard from Blue Sky and they need to change the October exhibition. Is that correct? I just heard this, so.
Oh, they haven't contacted me. I'll contact C and find out what's going on. I hadn't heard.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got an email from M. Prule.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was to you and me. He addressed it to both of us about changing the date.
Was that today?
Like for October, and they wanted to move it to either September or November. I haven't responded.
Did you get that today?
No, I got it about 3 or 4 days ago at least.
Oh. I guess it's possible I missed it.
Okay. Well, I'll forward it to you anyway.
Okay, please do.
Okay.
Okay, so then we need, I was telling Tim when he told us this, it was probably better to do the November one because September would be rushing it for everybody to get their print ready and stuff like that.
I agree.
Yeah, so I'll have to make some adjustments to email and just put November for now. And if something changes, we'll let you know as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. We are going to do the annual book this year, and the committee is meeting this week to pick a theme, and then announcements for that will follow up shortly thereafter with the deadline details, what the theme is. And as you know, the book is a compilation of members' photographs, and they will be available to you, the book, available to you to purchase later this year. So I believe November. That should be available for sale the beginning of November or late October. And then if anybody's interested in doing any event photography, the National Psoriasis Foundation has asked for volunteers to photograph their event on October 18 at the Oregon Zoo at noon. It's only for about 2 hours. There is free admission to the zoo. And more information will be sent out about that in our next August newsletter. I did it last year. It was rather dark in there. My camera, I was shooting with a Leica, and it's just going in a dark situation, shooting manual with a bunch of people just doesn't work. So I took out my cell phone. The pictures turned out great. So, you know, if you're worried about your camera, take out your cell phone. But anyway, they're looking for volunteers. And that would be a nice thing to do if anybody wants to do that. Does anyone else have any announcements or anything that they would like to bring up? Questions? All righty. Okay. We received some wonderful images sent in from our members on architecture and nature in harmony. We actually only had 61, so the slideshow is going to be a little bit shorter. And to shake things up, I reversed everybody. So we're going to see people with their last names. Anyway, I reversed it, so everything will be obviously Z to A instead of A to C. All right. It'll be just a second and I will get that going for you. Oh, I gotta share screen. And your sound. And here we go. Enjoy the show. If I can find my mouse. Okay, so weren't those great? I just loved how everybody had a different idea of what nature and architecture and harmony. I thought it was just really terrific. So next time, there's a lot of you that love doing those abstracts out there. So this is a great opportunity for you presenting those to us. So get out there and take your patterns of anything and show us some patterns next time. So I'm excited to see those. All righty. Okay, to start us off, Rita Silent will be our 15-minute member speaker tonight. Rita will be showing us her conceptual images she's been making since 2020, which has evolved from visual expressions to concepts that affect women in ways that are not obvious to the general public. So without further ado, let's welcome Rita and her wonderful photographs to the stage. And you're on mute.
Okay, Dawn, can you, I can hold my finger on this bar the whole time, or did you mute everybody, including me? Can I now unmute myself?
You're unmuted. Everybody else is muted.
Okay, well, I'm holding the space bar, and if I let go, I'm muted.
Oh, okay, so you need to go to
Okay, I'll hold the space bar. It's not a big deal. It's only
oh
15.
no, you should be able to do that.
Lower
Oh, on the
left.
Don,
bottom
if you
left-hand side.
Don, if you go to the list of people's names and the participants, you should be able to click on the microphone and ask her to unmute.
Oh, okay.
Do you see that where it shows people with their
Okay,
camera and their
I do,
microphone?
but when I go
Got it.
there,
I got it. I did it.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Dawn, and also thank you, Kathy Rady, and all of the program committee for making it possible. I don't know who invited who. I may have volunteered, but I think that this 15-minute presentation is good for all of us, not only to share, but to learn how to talk a little bit more about our own images. I've been a member of PPF for a number of years and had the pleasure of serving on the board, not in the too far past. I'm grateful for the inspiration that you all as photographers give to me. And I hope that I return that favor and we all grow together. In the interest of time, let's get started. I've only got 15 minutes and a lot to say. I'm going to hit the share button. And again, I want to thank Bob Bergstrom for mentoring me through this share screen piece. And let's see how it goes. Okay. I'm not seeing.
the share button's at the very bottom.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're seeing your screen now.
That's interesting because I'm not. So
You're not?
I'm gonna stop and I'll start again. Bob, feel free to butt in if sorry. But I am not seeing it. I can talk
Okay,
around it.
minimize your Zoom screen. Well, I'm seeing your,
Are you seeing my work?
okay, I see your desktop.
Okay, well, let's see. There's my talk, but
Okay,
hang on. I'll try this. And here we go. It's a little bit different than what I was going to do, but these are not now, they're not in order because they're not happening the way that I had hoped. So I'll ask you just to bear with me, and I'm sorry about the change. I'll show you, this is some of the work that I used to do. Portraits of family and friends. Did it for a very long time, and I found it a lot of fun and gratifying. But then, like all of us, I start to look around my environment and I see interesting people, interesting things. This is a waiter at a restaurant that I enjoy going, and he has tattooed on his arms, "Rise above the judgment of others," and his personality totally reflected that mood. Like many of us, I photographed the landscape around me. This has been a successful image. Unbeknownst to me, somebody saw it and wanted to buy a copy, and I was more than happy to oblige. So I'm gonna try to do these in the best I can in the order that I wanted to do. It might not be so smooth. So here comes COVID, and I can no longer do portraits, and the restaurants are closed. I can hike and take pictures, but now I'm being told in order to hike, I have to wear a mask. Well, that made me mad. And I found that we were strangled by an abundance of caution. So I made this image to express something internally that's churning, but that I can't say to anybody. I found a caution strip just in the grass somewhere, and I wrapped myself up in it, and I had my phone on a tripod. So this was totally a conceptual image, but totally staged. No compositing was necessary. Next up, I found out that, gee, it sure is easy to say the wrong thing. I certainly did that plenty. And I think we were a little sensitive. So again, churning at my computer, I made the image that you're looking at, hopefully, for walking on eggshells. And I did do a double exposure in the background of myself with the tape on my mouth. Well, moving on, let's see if I can get the order here. I made an image that I had a different meaning, and this is not unlike all of my images. There's something that I am trying to say, and the person who's looking at it may see something totally different. That's great. In this image, she could be doing one of two things. She could be waving hello, or perhaps she's calling for help. I tend to put an element in the image that would tell you the answer to that usually. And in this case, it's pretty vivid. It's the red flag. But it didn't really say what I wanted it to say. So I came back to Oregon and went over to the Oregon coast and made this piece on the right side, made it into a diptych. I don't know about you, but I read plenty about the increasing rate of suicides in young, healthy, smart people during COVID. And this is just, again, a private expression. I have not posted this image publicly. It is just something that I was churning about. And that can be anger. Churning can be anger. Churning can be a lot of things. But in this case, I just felt like maybe it wasn't being talked about enough. Again, my opinion, maybe not everyone else's. Shortly thereafter, there was conversation about Roe v. Wade being overturned. And we had a few days notice that this was about to happen. And again, I go back to my computer and I'm really churning. Well, this is a heavily composited image. My concepts are heavily composited. My thoughts, my interpretations, my perceptions are very heavily composited. So this image is as well. It's graphic, it's crude, and it has not been shown publicly on an Instagram post. I had this young woman, a friend of mine, pose for me very delicately. I put a hanger in her hand, as that is the tool, the notorious tool of a self-managed abortion. I have worked in healthcare for 42 years, and I will tell you what I learned about women. if they want an abortion, they're going to get one. And number two, sometimes people are going to die. So again, this wasn't meant for for public consumption, but I was really mad. And I composited in the sheriff over here on the right border, just to show the absurdity of what I thought was absurd about a sheriff coming to arrest someone who was dying. It just seemed so bizarre to me. But now, being a moderate, and I am, I wanted to express something about how other people might have looked at that issue. And so I show here a woman who seems to be, in my opinion, expressing remorse. Maybe not. It's the image, the thought lies in the eye of the beholder. But this is looking at the other side of a termination of pregnancy. So just wanting to express what other people might have seen. At the same time, sex trafficking. This is heavily composited. All these elements are taken from here in Portland. The young woman I know and have photographed since she was an infant. And again, this is not published publicly on my Instagram post ever, and never would be. Let's see. Make sure I don't leave any out. They all tie together. Okay, so I started to think about things that women feel that perhaps men don't. I think that men feel it, I'm sure, but I can't speak from the heart or mind of a man. I can only express what a woman might feel. A lot of people ask if, and assume, actually my friends down south assume that my work is autobiographical. It is not, except to the extent that I'm also a female. So I think that women have certain feelings that they express one way. I think men have probably those same feelings. They express them differently. Like I said, I can't speak to that. This one is homesickness. It's, I think, universal. Different points in our life, we have that feeling that we flashback or even get lost in reverie about something that we loved about our past. In this image, this young woman is maybe dreaming or daydreaming about her grandmother and her favorite doll. This, the ugly truth about women and alcoholism. It's all bad results, it seems, might start with fun and cheerfulness, as the lower part of this image depicts. And then at some point, we are forced to stare ourselves in the mirror and think about what's really happening. Self-doubt. We are our own worst critics. This is a double exposure. That is me both times. And it's not because I like doing the figure work, but I know the script and I'm always available and I'm cheap. So it works out great, but it makes everything a little bit trickier. I've gotten okay with it. It's all right. So I'm staring at myself back and forth. This image has been successful in exhibition. Then in the reverie of grief, everybody grieves differently, male, female, whoever. I think grief is a very private expression. In this scene, this woman owns this home that I had the pleasure of spending time in. And this room looks like something Edward Hopper would have painted it. And hence I've called it, to my hostess, her Edward Hopper room. She is holding a funeral pamphlet, touching the necklace at her heart, suggesting perhaps it was gifted to her by someone that she loved, her spouse, her lover. I'm going to let the viewer decide. I came home from this trip and I called my 83-year-old neighbor who I've lived next door to for 22 years. And I said, Jeff, can you come over to my loft, take off your shirt and lay down on my bed? And he said, that's the best offer I've gotten in months. So he came over and we got the job done. You can't see this, but his eyes are open, and as are hers. Both are looking in the same direction. That was serendipitous. I'd like to say that I did that on purpose, but it's better to be lucky than good, I find, in photography. Okay, so let's see. Going back, this is the same woman and expressing perhaps to me, or I was expressing and using her. She's out walking her dog and smoking a cigarette. And it was rainy and dark, just perfect, just my kind of place. And the fear that some women, maybe not all, but I do, this would be autobiographical. The fear that I feel when I'm on a dark street alone and a dark figure is approaching. It all turned out fine. She kept smoking and the dog got his business done and we were back upstairs in no time. So let's see, I think that is it. And I will end on this piece that photography is able to give all of us inspiration unbridled and almost childlike. You put a camera in our hands and we're the designer. So I wanted to end on a positive note and say that a famous photographer named Jay Mizell says that, in his opinion, a successful image will contain color, gesture, and light used to tell a story. So I hope that that is what I'm doing with this work. There are a lot of them. I chose just these to show tonight. And I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank those of you who have tutored me or mentored me on one question or another. I really appreciate it, and I hope that I can return that favor. And I'd like to give kudos to my mentor of 22 years, Susan Bean, who is a master of Photoshop and who has given me the freedom to do what I do without even worrying about it, because she's just made the tool so accessible. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. I love your conceptual images and that you're telling these really super important stories about women and what they go through. And I think all of us can resonate with something, and I think you're doing an awesome job at it. I love it. So does anybody have any other questions that you want to ask Rita about her work? Comments?
Rita, I just thought it was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it is beautiful and inspiring. So,
Thank you,
no,
Mark.
great work.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think so too. They're absolutely powerful and very emotional, and I really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
Yes.
They were wonderful, Rita. Particularly like that very last image you showed. That is just such a good example of conceptual photography. So
Yeah.
many thoughts come to mind when I see that. Do you take a lot of pictures and then kind of come up with your ideas by looking at your pictures and finding connections, or do you set out with an intention of making a particular image and then take pictures that suit it?
It works both ways. Roe v. Wade, sex trafficking, those things were obviously on the front of my vision, and I'm not alone. I don't think I'm unique at all. But many times I'll just see something that's a little wacky and I will take a picture of it and maybe not use it for 3 years. So I stage a lot of these conceptual images and then add something like my neighbor coming over. But then also I will build an image based on something I'm literally worried about or really mad about.
Mm-hmm.
Rita?
Yeah, comes
yes.
through. And even though that's a little girl, this is still fits in your, your pantheon of studies of women. To me, a little girl aspiring to, you know,
Well, children are so free to express themselves and tell stories with their imaginations. And I
Yeah.
think photography does that. It allows all of us to
yeah,
do it. So
that's
thank you
right.
very much. I appreciate your time and your attention.
Rita, the one that I loved the most was the one with the umbrella. And what I like about that one so much is that it's consumable, as it were, on many different levels. Uh, it's conceptually your explanation of the conceptual element um, makes it seem like that's the only way to look at it, but it's not. You can see it a lot of different ways, including the very simple way of as an image, just as a photographic image that I might make without a conceptual notion of what it might mean on a broader or more in-depth scale. I love that image.
Thank you. I do too. That's me, but I'm trying to be anonymous. It could be anybody. It could be any woman calling for help,
Okay.
calling out hello.
Anybody
Thank
else?
you, again, everybody. I appreciate it.
I just have one quick little comment. Rita, I so admire you for taking on like these huge, important topics, and trying to wrestle with those, So hats off to you and the wonderful images that you've created. Um,
Thank you, Janis. Thank you.
they're not lightweight. And neither are
Life,
the
life
subjects.
isn't. Life's messy, isn't it?
Yes, but I mean, you're taking on big, like huge, important topics, like in our societies, like right now. And gosh, I just so admire you for taking on that huge challenge. I mean, that's no easy task.
It's enriching, like your work, like your work.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to go ahead and
Yes, I'll stop.
share your screen, and then we will move on to our featured guest speaker tonight. Okay. Thank you, Rita. 100%. Okay. I am pleased to introduce Mike Peters, who will show us his street photography work. Mike's main focus of his work is people photographed in a context that helps tell a story. He's a passionate observer and draws inspiration for his photographs from the world around him. Please welcome Mike Peters.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say I've seen a lot of great work here. It's it's really great to see so many people doing such terrific stuff. So it's you should feel good about what you're presenting, because everything I've seen has been terrific. So it's not always the case. So so I've been a photographer since I was in high school, which puts me back, I guess, about 50 years. So I was when I was in high school, I had a much younger sister. She was 11 years younger than me, and she had leukemia. And photography basically gave me something to hold on to during that time in my family's life. So I often say that photography saved my life. I was also painfully shy, and always felt like I was on the outside looking in, and that everybody else's life was way more interesting than mine. I still feel that way for the most part. So photography was sort of a natural outlet for me, and it got me engaged in the world. And so for that, I'm really sort of forever grateful. So I try to take it seriously and go out and engage in the world that I live in, and take photographs that where I attempt to basically express how I feel about what I see. And I grew up in very working class town in New Jersey, a place called Kearney. And I was surrounded by people who, maybe weren't having the best lives ever. A lot of struggle going on, and I still sort of see that struggle. And so I go out in the world and I photograph what I know. And most of the photographs that you're going to see tonight were made within a few miles of my front door. So I don't travel a lot, because pretty much everything that I do is local. Of course, I started with film. I started with 4x5 for most of my personal work, and moved on to mostly shooting 35 and medium format. I'm a working photographer. I've made my living as a photographer since 1979. And right now I've been on staff at a university here in New Jersey for the past 25 years. And I shoot for all of their marketing and editorial and advertising stuff. So it's a fun and interesting job, and I get to be surrounded by young people all day long, which is the best part about it. And I get to try to reinvent the way I see the campus pretty much every day that I walk outside. So because the campus doesn't change. Well, I mean, it has a bit, but it's for the most part, it's up to me to try to see it differently. But in any event, I'm here to show you some work. So I'm going to, I guess I can share the screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Yes, file. Share. Okay. And so I'm just basically going to start this as a slideshow and sort of talk about how I work and what I do. And basically, what you're seeing here is, I walk around, I see people, I make photographs. And it's really pretty much that simple. I walk around New York City, New Jersey, and I meet people and I photograph them. I try to go to public events. This is a San Gennaro festival, but I try to really pick out the people that I photograph. Sometimes I ask them, often I don't. And I base that on whatever the situation is at a given time. I try to go to places where I'm going to be finding people out and about, except for I'm really sort of fascinated by casinos. I find casinos to be a really interesting place. I'm really not supposed to photograph in casinos, but I do it anyway. I hook up my phone to my camera and I shoot remotely with the camera over my shoulder, but by looking at my phone. So maybe it's cheating, maybe it isn't, but it gives me an opportunity to do what I want to do. Take my inspiration from Walker Evans, who used to shoot on the subway back in the 30s with a buttonhole camera, so he could do what he wanted to do. And I figure, anything that allows me to get the pictures I want to get. And so, but mostly, I'm pretty obvious about what I'm doing. I always have cameras over my shoulder. I've been going to this parade in local New Jersey for the past 20 years now, photographing people that I see there. Really not so much interested in the spectacle, but the spectators. So I try to look for the people that I find interesting. This was in Italy. My son got married there. That was the only reason I was there. But a lot of this is within about 20 miles of my front door. This guy was in the city. And this guy, of course, I asked him, and he was sort of skeptical, and I just told him that I really loved his outfit, and I said, "Can I make your photograph?" And he said, "Sure." So don't be afraid to ask people if you're not sure. You know, if you can photograph somebody without asking them, so it doesn't really intrude on the moment, that works too. You know, this was spontaneous. You know, I just try to see people in their element and photograph them in the moment. This was at the Halloween parade in the city last year. And I brought a light with me to light people because it was all at night and I wanted to try something a little different. So of course I had to ask everybody. But I've shot with a lot of different formats over the years. I've shot film, 2 1/4 film. I started shooting 120 film back in 2001. And so when I switched over to shooting digital for my personal work back in 2013, I kept the square format because I found that it allowed me to sort of see differently than I do when I'm on assignment. So I set my camera to a digital crop and just work it that way. Because I find that when I look at a square, I know that the picture is for myself and not for a client. When I shoot for a client, you know, there's a different head that you have to have where, you know, you're thinking about what the client needs and you want to make a useful picture for the client. But when I'm shooting for myself, I'm really only interested in how I feel about what I see and how do I express that. And so when I see the square in my camera, it sort of automatically like changes my head so I can sort of see differently. So it's you know, sort of a challenge composing with a square, but I actually really like it. I'm also sort of fascinated with the idea of people shopping at the holiday season. I find that most people seem really stressed. And I try to capture that in what I see. The shopping photos I also do in a way where it's not obvious that I'm taking photographs because you're not really supposed to photograph in a shopping mall. So again, I use the camera hooked up to a phone. Some guys you definitely have to ask before you photograph them. And then other people I just try to be really spontaneous with. I just love the expression on their face. This was an early shot with a 4x5 camera, which is how I used to shoot starting in the 70s up until about 2000, 2001. And when I shot during that time, I was shooting mostly color transparency film. And then when I started shooting 120 film, I started with a Rolleiflex and then a Hasselblad. I shot color negative film. Color negative film was a little bit more forgiving, but I tend to be really sort of specific with my metering. So, but you know, most of the time, like I say, I walk around, I see people, I make photographs. You know, I was in Chicago last summer and saw this guy. And, you know, I take my inspiration from a lot of different photographers. Matthew Brady, August Sander. I don't know if you ever heard of a guy named Mike Disfarmer. Diane Arbus, Richard Avedon, mostly portrait photographers. I also take a lot of inspiration from painting, from Rembrandt, from Alice Neal, Edward Hopper. You know, I love the vibe and the gravitas that comes through in all of their work, and I try to you know, get the same thing. You may notice that you really don't see any smiles in my photos. And I very specifically ask people not to smile when I photograph them. Only because I find that a smile, people tend to automatically smile when they see a camera. And to me, that's just marketing. And I do enough marketing photography and advertising photography to make sure that I don't want marketing photography for my personal work. And I find that a smile is as good as a mask. And I find that when people don't smile, it allows the viewer to sort of read into their face a little bit more deeply. You know, when their face is neutral, it tends to, I think, have a little bit more to say than an insipid smile does. I find that, you know, it's especially when I look back on early photography, paintings, people generally are not smiling. It's very rare. And I find that when people smile all the time, I think it's I don't know. To me, it's just kind of stupid. It's just marketing. Everyone's trying to pretend that their life is better than everybody else's. And I see the struggle on people's faces, and I want that to come through, because that's something as a society we don't necessarily talk about or acknowledge. And I think that, you know, we all have stuff. You know, we all have things going on in our life. And I find that it's important to give that a voice and to put it out there in the world and let people connect to it. And, you know, just show it for, you know, life as it is, as opposed to life as we think it should be. So that's really my whole philosophy about it. I've been also toying with the word sonder. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that. It's if you look it up, the concept is that everybody has a life. Everybody has a full and different life that's separate from our own. And in a way, we all get to be bit players in each other's lives as we come across everybody. And I feel like everybody that I photograph is like now a part of my life, and in a way I'm a part of their lives too, because I got to photograph them. And it's my proof that we shared this space for a very brief moment, and I acknowledge their presence by making their photograph. So for me, you know, even though these photographs might not be flattering, they're all sort of photographs of appreciation of each person's individuality and each person's presence, you know, that we shared a little bit of space together at the same time. And so it's you know, for me, it's a positive thing to make these photographs and to acknowledge that they were there. So, and I tend to really, you know, concentrate on just regular people. I'm not really interested in celebrities. As a matter of fact, I sort of can't stand celebrities. I sort of find that our whole celebrity culture is really warped. You know, we tend to make heroes of the wrong people. And to me, the heroes are the people who go to work every day and make a living and put food on the table and take care of their family, and you know, who are basically working hard just to get by, maybe trying to enjoy retirement in a dignified way. It's hard. This is one of the very first pictures that I took with my 4x5 camera, just for myself. And I had just gotten this camera. I was going to college, and I was learning the 4x5 camera at school, and I really loved it. So I found a really inexpensive one that I could buy, and I got home, set it up, and I took a photograph of my mother sitting at the kitchen table, you know, drinking her third cup of reboiled coffee and staring blankly at the newspaper as she did on Sundays. And this was after my sister died. And, you know, I think her expression is very honest. And I didn't really understand it at the time when I took the photograph. But, you know, as I got older and sort of learned more about life, I began to see differently about what I was doing. And, you know, I was always looking for that thing that sort of expressed how I felt. And this was that first picture that did that. And when I went back and found it many years later, you know, it was basically, you know, the common thread that sort of pulled a lot of what I was doing all together. I like to go to Coney Island on New Year's Day. I haven't done it in a while. Well, a couple years ago I did it, and photographed people coming out of the water after their polar bear swim. And she was there celebrating, you know, her cold dunk in the water. Turns out she was another photographer. Didn't know it at the time. You know, we exchanged information. She sort of found me on Flickr at the time, and then tragically, about 2 years later, she was hit by a car and killed. So it's I feel good that I have this photograph, and it's just, I don't know, it's weird how things sort of work out. For a couple of years, I photographed in the meatpacking district in New York City at night, and again, I brought a light with me. I had a flash on a pole with an umbrella, and I would just ask people if I could photograph them. And I was doing this with film. I was shooting with a Hasselblad at the time. And one thing that sort of pissed me off about the Hasselblad is that you really needed a lot of light in order to make it work. And I really couldn't shoot at night, and I wanted to. So I came up with this idea to go out and shoot this way, and just so I could continue to photograph at night. So I tend to go, this is again Coney Island, I tend to go to places that, you know, I have an affinity for, that I have a sense of feeling about, and find people there in those places that I find interesting. And that's really sort of my whole motivation, is just go someplace that I care about and find the people that spark my interest. You know, I found that town, Ridgefield Park, you know, like I say, almost 20 years ago now, and I just keep going back because I find it's sort of an interesting, very small town America, you know, 4 miles from New York City. It's a really interesting place. So I just keep going back to the places that I feel like I have some sort of an emotional attachment to. Now, this is a sort of an oddball thing. As I started going to this trade show called Exotica, where it's a very sex and kink positive trade show, and you know, you see all kinds of people there. And so again, I brought a light with me just to sort of do it a little differently. And it's, you know, it's sort of fun. I find it's, you know, people should lighten up about things like that. But, you know, to me, this is just all about acknowledging people's existence. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Thoughts, observations?
Mike, I have, gosh, a whole panorama of questions. Like the first one is like, like you have an amazing body of work here. And like, do you have any like personal like hopes, dreams, aspirations for this body of work? And I'm getting a little bit older, and I think about like what's going to happen to my body of work after I die. So like that's the first question. And the second one is like, how do you think how do you think differently with the different formats? Like 4x5 is totally different than your Hasselblad, and I don't know what format you're shooting on digital, but I mean, those are totally different formats, and how you deal with people, and how like one takes time, others don't take as much time. So that's the second question.
Okay, so yeah, I do think about what I'm going to do with all this work. Um, I have no idea. um, you know, I'll probably try to put together some sort of a book. I want to put together a book after next year on the 4th of July pictures that I've been taking for the past 20 years. I'm going to try and do it by subject matter. I mean, if I did it by just a general thing, I mean, there's probably too many. I mean, what you're seeing here is sort of a mishmash of everything. If you go to my website, you can see the various individual projects that I've worked on. I mean, I don't know how I would mash it all together. But yeah, I would love to have the work out there. I don't know if it ever will. I doubt a publisher will ever pick it up because, I'm just a guy from New Jersey with a camera. I'm not famous and I don't photograph famous people, so I'm pretty realistic about that. But, I'll try to self-publish. I did self-publish a book with a friend of mine a couple of years ago about Coney Island. There's a link to it on my website. It's called Coney Island Double Vision. And another street photographer, Matt Weber, he's more of a classical street photographer. I'm more of a street portraitist. We combined his black and white rectangles and my color squares, and made the book together about Coney Island. But we printed 200. We probably still have less than 100 left, but there's still quite a few. So I'm not really famous. Matt's probably more famous than I am, and even so, we still had a hard time selling books. So if I sell books, I'll be shocked if anybody buys them. But there's always hope, and I hope that when I get to retire in a couple of years, that I'll have the time to really sort of devote to trying to do something with it. But as far as the different formats, yeah, switching from 4x5, which was completely slow, to 2.25. 2.25 gave me a bit more of an opportunity to be spontaneous and in the moment, and to capture the decisive moment, as Cartier-Bresson would say. And so I tried to take advantage of that and shoot more without asking. And now that I'm shooting digital, the picture you're seeing up on the screen is a digital shot. I really try to take advantage of the fact that the camera allows me to photograph on the fly without, and to be able to keep things sharp. Like, I saw this woman sort of approaching me from across the street, and I shot from the waist, which is how I prefer to shoot. I prefer looking up at people and not looking down at people. And I was able to, lock in on her eyes and photograph multiple frames of her as she walked towards me across the street. And, I love the way she was touching his arm and the expression on her face. And I'm not sure what it is. I'll leave that up to you. But I could not have gotten that shooting 4x5. But the sensibility is still the same. as to how I see things and what I want to say about what it is I'm doing. So I try to take advantage of what the format gives me, but I don't try to change my point of view about what it is I'm doing. So that's really sort of my only take on that. You know, and then here, this is another digital one, but you know, I specifically asked this man not to smile. You know, because I feel like, I don't know, some people, you know, he's there, I don't know what all of his various badges mean, but I feel like there's some gravitas to him and to what he's doing, and I want that to come through. A number of years ago, I was in Nicaragua, and you know, I don't get to travel a whole lot, but when I was there, I was there on a job, and I also brought my Hasselblads with me. And whenever I asked someone to if I could photograph them, they immediately sort of like pulled themselves up straight and comported themselves with a sense of seriousness. And it reminded me so much of like what the earlier work that I had seen of what August Sander did, like a Rembrandt. You know, there was a sense of pride about just themselves, and they didn't smile, which was great. And so I find that's really important. And it's like, I always find that when people smile, it kind of ruins, because a smile is a very definitive statement. It's an exclamation point. It says, look at me, I'm great. But a more neutral face, or if, a lot of times when I ask people not to smile, they say, why? I said, well, I'll tell you in a minute. And I take a few photographs and I tell them when I'm done, I say, you know, when I ask you not to smile, it makes you think about why I asked you not to smile. And I find that people who are thinking are more interesting to photograph.
I have a question. Physically, how close are you to the subjects that you photograph?
I'm mostly shooting with the equivalent of like an 80 millimeter lens on a Hasselblad, or a 40 millimeter lens on 35 millimeter. Or in this case, I'm shooting with a Micro Four Thirds camera with a 20 millimeter or 25 millimeter lens, which is basically a normal lens. Sometimes a slightly wider lens, a 15 or a 16. So, and then sometimes even as close as a 12. So I'm usually within anywhere between 3 to 6 feet of people. Very close. I find it's really important that, especially if you're not going to ask somebody, to be in very close proximity to them, because it's very disarming for people. If you're photographing from across the street with a long lens, that makes people crazy because they think that you're spying on them. But if you're right there in front of them, they're less likely to become confrontational than if you're shooting with a 300 millimeter lens. So, and it's really important that if somebody does say something, that you just smile and you acknowledge them, and just tell them that you think that they're handsome, beautiful, interesting, whatever, that you love their shirt, you love their hat, you love whatever. But it's important to figure out a way to disarm people and not be intimidated. Otherwise, you'll never do this stuff.
Sounds like it's like an experiment in psychology.
Well, yeah, life is an experiment in psychology, isn't it?
Yeah.
It took me a long time. Like, I remember when I first started shooting, even with the 4x5, I would walk. The reason I started shooting on the street with a 4x5 is because it was an instant conversation piece. It allowed me to get over my shyness, and it was a way to start a conversation without having to say a word. People would say, wow, that's a cool camera. I've never seen one like that. So it was a way to sort of break the ice, because I was terrified to speak to people when I was younger. Even until like the early 2000s, when I first started shooting with the Hasselblad, I would get out of the car, I'd walk around, and I'd get back in the car and drive home, because I was too terrified to lift my camera and take a photograph. And then I got so mad at myself And I asked myself a question. It's like, okay, so what's more important, the fear or the photograph?
Mm-hmm.
The fear is going to be fleeting. I'm going to turn around and walk away, and I'm not going to be afraid anymore. But if I take the photograph, I'll have that photograph forever.
Yeah.
So I just decided to say, F it, I'm just going to take the photograph. Because I'm a photographer, damn it, and that's what I do. And so I just, I mean, still every time I go out, the first photograph is the hardest, even now. But, I do it. And honestly, what I do for a living has made it a lot easier for me to sort of get over the hump, because I'm constantly walking into places and walking into situations where I'm not necessarily expected, and I have to go in and make photographs. So, I see it as when I'm out with a camera, I'm there to make photographs. So no matter what it is. So
Ike,
yeah,
I have a couple of thoughts here. One is, I think you've answered one of them. You managed to you don't get rid of any of the junk in the background in those photographs except by depth of field. That's the
right.
only way I've seen it. And I love that you left everything in there, that you don't make any effort to get rid of the bright spot, whatever. So I really like that.
Yeah, thank you.
I have to say, I absolutely do not agree with you about smiles. I don't think I think everybody has to have their own way, but I've seen lots of gorgeous smiling photographs.
Yeah, I do. I've seen them too, but it's not my style.
Right. It's a matter of style. Yeah, it's a matter of style.
It's not what I have
Here's
to
a
say.
perfect example. This one is a perfect example. Look at that depth of field. It's gorgeous how you've used the depth of field to make her stand out of all that trashy background.
Right. This was in a bar, and she was looking out the open door, and honestly, I had my camera on top of a mug of beer, and I was shooting wide open at a 30th of a second, just a mere few feet away from her. So with digital, I could have just pushed the ISO, it wouldn't have mattered. But yeah, I like shooting. One of the things that I enjoyed and noticed with the larger format stuff that I used to shoot is that the depth of field was always fairly low, and it helps to isolate the people from the background. And so I continue to do that with the Micro Four Thirds gear that I'm using. So I shot Lumix for many years, and now I'm shooting with Olympus cameras, but it's really sort of irrelevant. It's really more about how you see things.
Mike, my name is Mike as well,
Hey, Mike.
and I've been shooting street for 6 years or so. And I was shooting from across the street, and only rarely did I like them. And I thought, I'm going to just walk up to somebody and say, I love your tie. May I take your picture? And really wouldn't talk to them. And then after a while, I got very interested in the subject, the people. And now I seem to be talking to them way more than photographing them, which is sometimes I don't even take their picture after I've talked to them for 5 or 10 minutes. And I seem to be, very getting more comfortable talking to strangers and getting less interested in taking the picture.
Well,
Although
yeah.
I usually do.
Yeah, you have to balance that, I guess.
Yeah.
So, try not to get lost in the conversation, but remember why you're there.
Right.
And if you go out of the house with your camera and a 50mm lens, and that's the only lens you bring, that's a really good way to make sure you're going to get close to people.
Right.
Leave the long lenses home. A friend of mine, Walter knows, he came to me, he says, oh yeah, I shoot street photography too. And everything was with a long lens. I said, well, said, that's not street photography, that's surveillance photography. You might as well go shoot for the FBI. So, you know, I finally convinced him that he should be shooting with shorter lenses. And, you know, he finally figured that one out. Became very good at it too. But, you know, it's like, you know, if you look at all of the really great street work over the years, none of it was done with long lenses. It was all done with slightly wide to normal lenses. The longest lens that most people used was like a 50. Most of the guys, especially like Winogrand or Meyerowitz, were running around with a 28. So it's so you know, again, it's all about what you want to do. And I don't always engage the subjects. You know, in the casinos, I'm not. You know, this was just caught on the fly. I was just walking across the street and saw her. Well, him I asked. But, you know, the casino stuff is, you know, this guy was just standing there and I just raised my, you know, I was there with my camera and he was looking at me. These people I asked. Or I did not. I've been standing on the street corner for also about 20 years, taking photographs, waiting for the light to change. Corner of 42nd and 8th, before I get on the bus to go home. But it's, you know, at a certain point, you know, what you might want to try to do, Mike, is to not talk to people for a while and see if you can just take their photograph spontaneously without talking to them, or maybe have the conversation, you know, like the gunfighters used to say, shoot first, ask questions later. With photography, you can actually get away with that. But, you know, maybe take the photograph first and then have the conversation. Because obviously you're seeing something about the person that makes them interesting. And so maybe if you can get that photograph of them before they become aware of what you're doing, you'll have the photograph. Then you can have the conversation. And then if you feel like you want to make another photograph, you can do that. Give yourself options.
Mike,
Yeah?
I really like what you said about having them not smile. And I wrote down what you said, a smile is as good as a mask. And when you, I know you disagree, Joanna, but I think these are much more moving without the people smiling. And you said, I want to make sure I get this right, because I'm going to start doing this. So you said that when you ask them not to smile, you say it makes you think, and that when people are thinking, it makes for a better photo. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think if somebody...
I agree.
Yeah. So, you know, if somebody has a specific reason to smile, if they're in a very jovial situation, like I photograph lots of people smiling at parties, at, you know, things that are happening on campus. There's a lot of joy that I photograph. But for my personal work, it's not necessarily, you know, what I'm seeing all the time. So, you know, it's like, you know, when I see people walking down the street, they're not walking down the street. They're walking down the street with their, you know, resting whatever face it is. And that's the face that interests me. You know, like, you know, so I like to go to Penn Station in Newark and photograph. Well, a lot of reasons, but so I was in there and, you know, I was getting a soda, and, you know, I saw the girl behind the counter and she just had that far away look in her eye. And I just love that. That's sort of like, she's just looking off into the middle distance, thinking about someplace else where she'd rather be than asking me what size I want my soda. And to me, that expression on her face says so much more than any smile could. That's just me, though. You know, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But if somebody has a reason to be smiling, I'm more than happy to photograph them that way. I just don't see that, you know, walking down the street on a regular basis. Where I do see that is in there are some, so there's a bunch of different shopping malls in New Jersey. And the one that I go to is mostly caters towards working class people, which is where it's the same mall that I used to go to when I was a kid, because that's where we went. It's called Willowbrook. There's another one called Short Hills, and it's really, really high end. And most of the people there have like way more money than I could ever dream of. Okay, so you go there and it's like, it's a very different vibe. People there, they're not stressed about spending money. When I go to Willowbrook, everyone there is stressed about spending money. And that's sort of where I come from and who I am. And so that's what I'm interested in photographing. You know, a friend of mine said, well, why don't you go to Short Hills? It's different. I said, yeah, it is different, but it's not really like where I come from. I'm not interested in that segment of society. It doesn't interest me. It holds no appeal to me. I'm interested in telling the story of like where I come from more than anything. And where I come from, it's like, you know, look, it was filled with people who worked really, really hard with their hands usually. They didn't get paid a lot of money. The fathers all drank a lot. The mothers were nasty. Everybody was angry. There was a lot of like dysfunction going on in everybody's house that was never talked about because nobody talked about anything in those days. You know, everyone was trying to be a fine, upstanding citizen, good Catholic, good whatever. And, you know, everything was, ooh, hush, hush, no, we don't talk about that stuff. So, but it's like, it was all there. Everybody knew it. It was no, you know, so it's like, I always knew that behind every facade was like a big pile of stuff. And so, to me, that's like a reality that I understand and that I get. And so I'm not shy about like showing that. It's just my thing. So this woman here, okay. This was at the Exotica show. She was there waiting for her husband to show up. And we started by having a conversation, Mike. I was talking to her. And she said, yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to, she said, I had a breast cancer last year and I had surgery. And she said, I'm just trying to sort of reclaim my body. And she said, screw it. And she just pulled open her shirt and there it was. She said, take my photograph. I said, perfect. Everybody's got a story.
Mike, when you're taking these photographs, how much do you think about like the backgrounds? For example, like I love that photograph of the lady in the McDonald's and the guy with the I guess he was a soldier or something holding the flags, and the trunk of his car was open, and in the background was the perfect American Vermont house in the background. Total story in one shot, like you couldn't have composed it any better for advertising. Then I think about like the lady that had this incredible look and she was touching the man in front of her, touching his arm. And I found it a little bit troubling. Off to the left was this lady in purple doing some stuff. And I was trying to make those kind of work together. And to me, they didn't work together because I loved that look on that lady when she was, you know, just gently touching the guy's arm. So how much do you think about backgrounds when you're out there photographing?
It's really sort of a very unconscious thing. I can't think and make photographs at the same time. So it just has to be a very sort of a spontaneous moment where, you know, I see the subject and then I just try to balance the frame. Like the woman holding the guy's arm as they were crossing the street. To me, that's a picture all about dissonance. It's not necessarily harmony, where you have this big black mass of a man on one side and this other. I wanted to give a sense of life in the background. I think that's really important to show some that there's life in the rest of the frame. And so I sort of allow stuff like that to sort of like seep in and not necessarily create sort of more of a dynamic tension in the composition, as opposed to necessarily having to make it always harmonious. Because life is often really messy, and I allow that messiness to sort of come through. Often, what's going on in the background is I'm sometimes not even aware of it when I'm photographing. I'm so keyed in on the person's face, but unconsciously I'm able to sort of like, balance where I stand and how I move to sort of make it work. It's all about, just trying to, as I often say, photography is how we sort of put a frame around the chaos of the world. And sometimes it's really neat and clean, and sometimes it's really messy. But always sort of what's there, at least for the work that I do, is all about telling the story about what it is that I'm seeing. And it all adds context, and, as Dawn mentioned, it's like, it's all about the context of where they are. Like, this frame here that I paused on, there's a man waiting for the light, and this little kid and this other guy sort of like careening in from the left side of the frame, and all the other people, faces, and the craziness of the lights and the taxi cab, but that kid's gaze up on the guy's face, and the guy's just like sort of like doesn't even know. So the kid sort of reminds me of myself, staring at the guy just as I am, with the same level of curiosity. And that's the kind of curiosity that I want to always have. It's just like the kid who is unabashedly staring at this guy, trying to look at him and sort of figure it all out.
I really like the backgrounds in it. It really gives an atmosphere to it. In my photos, I try not to edit. I don't like editing afterwards, even if it's, really complicated or if it's minimalistic. I like to let the camera do all the work and capture everything. And I really like your atmosphere that you capture with these.
Yeah, thanks. It's it's all about, making sense of the frame. Sometimes there's balance and sometimes there isn't. And, either way, you have to make it work.
Mike,
Yeah,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, one of our sons lives in Brooklyn, and I get so intimidated when I'm there. People are my favorite thing to photograph, and I find that I might leave there with like 3 photos of people. And but what you're saying is you shoot from the hip a lot, so you're able to look at them, and you don't always ask permission. You're just and afterwards you just tell them they had an interesting face, or
Sometimes I don't say anything. I just shoot and move.
okay.
Like the woman crossing the street holding the guy's arm. There was nothing exchanged there. So it all depends on the situation. Sometimes, on the street, like, I didn't ask these kids. This was at the Easter parade. I didn't ask this woman either. She was just walking down the street towards me, and I was just like enthralled with her outfit and her umbrella. And I just, I think I actually had the camera, to my eye at this point, and just, made a whole series of pictures of her as she walked towards me. So, and she obviously saw what I was doing. And that's part of what I love about it. A lot of times I really like it when I'm photographing somebody and they actually see what I'm doing. And they sort of catch me, and I try to photograph them in that instant between them seeing me and then sort of recognizing what's happening.
Okay, thank you. You've given me courage for my next trip.
Where in Brooklyn do your kids live?
Williamsburg.
Okay, my son's in Flatbush.
I love going there.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, 50mm lens is a good focal length if you don't want to get too close to people. I wouldn't bring anything longer than that.
Mike, I have a question for you. Some of the people that you pointed out to be your mentors, inspiration, like Diane Arbus and Richard Avedon, August Sander, they all shot in purely black and white. Your work reminds me more of Bruce Gilden. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I think I'm different from what Bruce does.
Yeah, you don't do the,
Yeah.
far out people quite to that extent, but the
Right.
color, the really vivid colors and the, almost flash of light look that he gets. So so I was a bit surprised that you pointed those others out as your
Well, yeah, I mean, early on, when I did a lot of my serious work when I was younger in black and white because I could control it.
Mhm.
But now, with being able to shoot digital or before that scan film, I can control color now too. I have total control over it.
Yeah, you do a very nice job with the colors. They're beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. I'm very, very specific about, how the pictures look.
Mhm.
So, how they're exposed and, what I can pull out of them. But I feel like at a certain point after I had to give up my darkroom in the mid 90s. And once I gave up the darkroom, I sort of lost my appetite for black and white.
Mhm.
And I just really sort of concentrated on shooting color at that point. And I feel like it's how I see the world now, and it's how I want to express myself. And fortunately, I was shooting color when I was shooting on the street with the 4x5, because I really love the look at the color transparencies. And now being able to scan them, I can get even more out of them. This series that I'm showing now, I went to a dirt track where they do racing on weekends. And, again, I just photographed the people that I saw there. Yeah, I just try to keep what I do really simple.
I don't think anybody has asked us yet about, the editing, and just a lot of people in this group do use Photoshop and do amazing things with post-production. So I'm just really intrigued that you haven't changed anything. It is what you see.
Well, it is
Or
me.
are you enhancing some of the colors or things like that?
I know I'm not enhancing the colors. I'm actually wrestling them into what I want them to be, into my memory of what it is that I saw, as opposed to just what the camera's going to give me. To me, it's my responsibility to make it the color I want it to be. Just as it was when I shot black and white, it was my responsibility to get the tones out of it that I wanted. So I shoot only raw format, and everything gets worked on. Rarely, I've never met a camera that gives me exactly what I want right out of the camera. So, I work on the color and skin tones and color of the sky and all of the ancillary colors around in the picture. I try to make sure that they're sort of reflect what my mind's eye saw. So, and my set point for that is basically all of the color transparency film that I shot through the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and into the early 2000s. And so I use that, what's in my head, to sort of guide my eye when I'm working in Photoshop. You know, I try
Your
to.
colors they're interesting. They're, I mean, they're so vivid, but in a way they're kind of, I don't know, odd way to describe it is sort of desaturated in a, you know, in a, I don't know, a saturated way. I don't know how to describe it, but it's, you just get these bold colors without, you know, crossing the line to overly saturated. It's really
Yeah,
nice.
I really hate overly saturated color. I've seen a lot of that, and I just think it's just I don't know, it's just garish. So I try to keep the color looking natural. Really, just more than anything, I just want it to look real. I want it to, when you look at, when you see this, I want you to feel like you're looking at life. Really, that's my whole point of view about this, is that this is life, and that's how I want you to see it. So that was the track. So that was like a, you know, sort of a complete body of work that I have. I mean, I got a bunch of them. And this is a more, you know, complete look at the July 4th stuff. And all of this is on my website if anybody wants to go look. But, you know, this, I actually started shooting I started shooting this with the Hasselblad on color negative film. And so I'm actually going back and reprocessing a lot of the film scans to sort of, because my ability to work on them was sort of limited back in the earlier Photoshop. So I'm going back and reprocessing a lot of these, because I find a lot of these now are a little too oversaturated. So, you know, eventually I will update these film scans with, you know, newer files that'll, you know, work a little bit more according to how I see color now. One of the things I accept is that my sense of color evolves, and so keeping all of the raw files allows me to go back and sort of retweak them as my sensibility changes, which I think is really important to anybody. Because, you know, I'm shooting film up until about, you know, maybe this point. I think this is the last of the film. And then I started shooting digital. So.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah. Hey,
Walter
Walter.
here. Hey. So I don't have much to add to what other people have said about your work. I continue to admire you and your work. And I appreciate the fact that so much of your imagery, despite your editing, looks just totally real.
Yeah, thanks.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you know, it's important to me that it does. You know, this project, I sort of really leaned into the fact that, you know, the lighting in casinos is really very unreal. So I just, yeah, it's vulgar. And I just sort of leaned into that, and I just let it be as vulgar as it is, you know, without trying to make it into something that it wasn't. This just would not work in black and white. But this also required me to really pull back on a lot of these colors that were totally oversaturated. You know, I had to be very careful with a lot of this stuff, because it did tend very much towards being like just so completely over the top. So this required, if anything, like a lot more restraint and, you know, a lot of desaturating certain colors. So it just, you know, so it wouldn't burn out your retinas when you looked at it. But I mean, this is, you know, my goal is, you know, whenever I work on a file is it has to get printed. And the printing process, no matter what it is, whether it's a print, you know, fine art print, a C print, something from my pigment printer, or if it's going to go in a book, it's got to reproduce. And I've seen files that photographers give people that are completely unreproducible. And it makes me crazy, because it's like, well, you know, you've abdicated your responsibility to make an image that will actually be able to be printed. When I see colors completely blocked up and there's no texture in them, it makes me wild, because it's like, you don't have to do that. There's ways to go in and selectively adjust certain colors so, you know, you can actually get detail in them. So that's you know, I've been a working photographer for, I don't know, 46 years now. So it's like, so I'm very comfortable with being in absolute control of the technical aspect of it, because I have to be able to deliver pictures to clients on a daily basis. So for me, it's sort of second nature to be able to go in and do that. For some people, you know, who don't do it on a regular basis, it might be a little bit more time consuming. You know, but in my daily job, you know, I may go into an event and photograph 5,000 or 6,000 pictures, and then have to turn that around in less than 24 hours to a client. You know, I have to go in, cull through them, edit them, get it down to a reasonable number, and then pull a couple hundred into Photoshop and adjust them all, and then send them out to the client.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah?
considering this wild kaleidoscope of colors and your ability to manage it, you shoot raw, but as I recall, you use sRGB. Is that right?
Yes.
How does that work? How do you?
Anything can reproduce sRGB. Your screen can't reproduce anything more than that. The internet can't reproduce anything more than that. Most book or magazine publishers can't reproduce anything more than that. And the reality is that even most printers will struggle to reproduce anything more than that. You know, some people, you know, if you take an Adobe RGB file and you stick it into an sRGB environment, it's going to look really flat and nasty. And I found that out the hard way. You know, I was really wed to Adobe RGB earlier on, and I would see stuff printed in magazines and brochures. I'd see it on the web, and everything looked sort of flat and nasty. And I would say, oh, well, it's Adobe RGB. I know it's all there. But the reality is that nobody cares what color space it is. The only thing they care about is how does it look. And when I put everything into sRGB, it looks great. It doesn't change from how I see it on my screen to how I see it on the internet, to how I see it published on the side of a bus or a billboard or a wall wrap or a magazine page. So yeah, I've sort of settled on sRGB as the do anything color profile. And if you can make it look good in sRGB, it's going to look great no matter where you put it. So, you know, the big color spaces are, you know, it's like, I don't know, you know, some people want to print everything from, you know, what is it, ProPhoto RGB, because it's the biggest color space. Well, that's great, but you can't do anything else with it. And your printer's going to, like, you got to go through all this profiling and blah, blah, blah. I find that with sRGB, when I send it to my Canon printer, it spits out a print that looks exactly like it does on the screen. And if I can make it look like the way I want it to look on the screen, that's all I care about.
Makes sense.
Just keep it simple. That's, you know, it's like I'm too dumb to make it complicated. So it's like, I don't want to go there. And
absolutely not true.
well, I just try to make it, but the reason, you know, I don't expose myself for being as dumb as I am is because I try to keep it really simple. No, it's like I I leave the struggle to making the pictures and corralling the color. I don't need to make my life more complicated by being wed to this crazy color space that nothing can reproduce. Maybe 2 or 3 monitors on the planet. And I can't afford those monitors anyway. So it's like, this
Mike?
works. Yeah?
Mike, I want to say that you've left me with a great gift tonight, and that is don't worry about the background. I love the fact that all these shots are so busy, and it's rather than being distracting, which I usually think of it that way, it's additive, and I just consider that a great gift. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It adds to the story.
Absolutely.
When you abstract somebody out of their context, then you just, I mean, what is it? Then it's a studio photograph, which is fine. I mean, look, I love Avedon's studio portraits, but what Avedon did in the studio, especially, you know, with his personal work, if you look at the portrait book, it's just astonishing. I mean, he gets people, talk about psychology. I mean, he was the master of getting stuff out of people that was truly, I don't know, just beyond the beyond. And he did that all on a white background. I'm not as talented as Avedon, so I need to lean on the background. Plus, I'm not as famous as him, and I can't get all these people to come to my studio.
Mike, I have another question. After all this talk about color, there's one image I would like to see again. It was sort of toward the end of your main presentation. It was a shot that you took of the backs of a couple that he had his arm around her in an embrace. And that one had very little color, as I recall, but it just struck me as, do you know which one I'm talking about? She's wearing a gray top, and you took it from behind them. They were facing away from you.
From the first?
No, well, toward the very end of the main reel that you, main slideshow. Let's see if I can.
I remember that shot.
Are you seeing it here?
I don't see it. Maybe it's in. I have got my gallery strip of people
coming up.
Yeah, I think it was much further down.
Well, it was sort of probably randomized as it came through, I think.
Oh, really? When you did it? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I spot it, I'll shout.
Yeah. If it's yeah, let me know. We're at the top. I
don't see it.
It may have been. I think the next one that I did was Speedway, maybe.
Oh.
This one.
It was in this one.
Yeah, this one. Right.
That's it.
Right.
I don't know, that one just really grabs me, and it looks more colorful than I remember the first time, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, thank
you. Gorgeous hair. Look at that gorgeous red hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got that. The skin tones and the hair perfectly.
It's again, it was just one of those moments where, you know, there's something else going on, and you know what it is. And then the other one, like there's a reason for smiling. Right? So it's not like I never photograph smiles, but you know, she had a reason for smiling. But I love his expression where he seems a little pensive. It's just interesting. But I love the fact that they're holding hands. You know, it's just this youthful exuberance, and it's just like, it's really charming, and I love it as a moment.
Mike, do you optimize your color using the camera raw sliders, or do you go into Photoshop?
Oh no, I do everything in Adobe Camera Raw through Bridge. So it's, you know, 99% of everything I need, well, really 100% of everything I ever need to do, I can do through Adobe Camera Raw. I don't use Lightroom because I organize my own files, but I do everything in Adobe Camera Raw, which just keeps evolving to become better and better.
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Yeah, it's just astonishing what I can do now.
Mike, my view of portraiture is that the purpose of portraiture is to show the character of the person or persons you're photographing. And I'm just astounded that virtually every single photograph that you showed captures the character of the person or persons you were photographing. I'm just astounded.
Thank you.
So well done.
Thank you. Well, all of these pictures from this series, I shot as I did in the shopping mall and in the casino, through the app on my phone without necessarily pointing my camera at people. I had it sort of like slung over my shoulder in the crook of my arm, and I would just move my arm to sort of get the framing that I want, and I would take the photograph that way. Because I felt like in this situation, I didn't want to ask, I wanted to be completely spontaneous, but I also felt like I was intruding into a sort of a private world where my presence might not be necessarily appreciated. And I felt like it was really important for me to be able to capture this, completely spontaneously. And so, remarkably enough, by leveraging the technology that I have in my hand, I could do that. So,
Mike, I apologize. I'm not following about the app on your phone.
so like the camera is like over my shoulder,
Uh-huh.
and it's like usually here in the crook of my arm, but I'm just looking at my phone.
Oh, okay.
And I can take the picture, I can make the camera take the picture through my phone.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I can see the composition, I can see where it's focused, I can adjust the
Yeah.
compensation.
Okay.
I can do all of that, just,
I did catch that part. I understood what you were doing, and thought that was so brilliant. But
yeah.
how what is it? Is it an app that is related to your phone? Excuse me, related to your camera, like
Um,
or another app?
Like Lumix makes an app that lets me do that, and Olympus makes an app that lets me do that. I don't know if anybody else has an app like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Like I
But
said,
is your camera because you said you're shooting with Olympus? Is your camera the Lumix?
no, I have an Olympus camera now. I still
Okay.
have Lumix cameras too, but I can do it with either one, either camera. It doesn't really matter. And the lenses are interchangeable, so they use the same lens mount. It's actually like one of the smaller formats. The crazy thing is that I shoot with this little tiny camera, but I get these enormous wall wraps printed at the university that are like, 12 feet tall by like 30 feet wide, and they look just astonishing. So, it's like, if your technique is good, it almost doesn't matter what camera you use. So,
Mike, also, so there's obviously no model release form. I mean, but you're not selling these images, so they're basically what we're looking at are creative projects. Is
yeah.
that correct? Okay.
So I can sell fine art prints. I mean, not that anybody's going to buy one. It's like inviting a stranger into your home. I can make books. I can show them in galleries. I can make an ad if I wanted. If I had an exhibition and I wanted someone to come see it, I could put an ad and put one of these pictures in. That's all sort of settled law. I don't have to worry about any of that. And so I can, but I can't take one of these images and sell it for advertising. I can use it as for editorial usage in a magazine. You know, you don't have to ask permission. We're basically in public, and there's no expectation of privacy in a public place. So, I mean, I can use these pictures for my own purposes, but I can't sell them for a third party. So, which is fine, because I don't want to. So, I'm not interested in trying to sell anybody else's idea or product off the backs of these people. I just want to, you know, show them for, you know, how I see them.
Okay,
This is that corner of 42nd and 8th Avenue where I've been working for years. And I just sort of really love the sea of faces that come by. And also the way the light changes, the way the seasons change, you know, people, I don't know, the way people dress. Yeah, it's all, I find it all interesting. Probably nobody else does. I'm the only one that does. That's okay. But that's the whole thing about what we do is you need to follow your own interests. You need to do what you find interesting, not what anybody else finds interesting. And if you spend your life doing that, you'll come up with a body of work. I'm not trying to please anybody with these photographs. I'm just trying to satisfy my curiosity about what I see and who I see in the world as they pass me by. My commercial work is all about pleasing clients, giving clients useful pictures. So, you know, I do that on a daily basis, but I don't feel like with my personal work, I need to please anybody except myself at all. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I think that's, you know, that's sort of the tack that we all have to take. You know, I don't feel like I'm in competition with anybody except myself to get the best possible picture I can get at any given moment. So, you know, photography is not a competition.
So I know, Mike, that you're calling you're over there on the East Coast and it's after midnight.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
And I haven't fallen asleep yet. That's amazing. Usually my head hits the keyboard and it makes a loud thud, and I get like letters embedded in my forehead. It's really terrible. So I managed not to fall asleep tonight.
Well, yeah, you did a terrific job tonight, and everybody's engaged, loving your work. It's so beautiful, and the essence, you're capturing the essence of these people, and I think pictures of people are the most fascinating ones that you can make.
To me, this is
Interesting.
Thank you. When people say, "Oh, I photograph wildlife," I say, "Well, yeah, I photograph wildlife too." On the streets of New York City.
Right. So, does anybody have any more questions before we close up? And anyone? Okay. Anyway, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate your presentation tonight. It was just fantastic.
Thank you all for not falling asleep. I appreciate that.
So that's it for tonight. The next print share is August 4th from 6 to 8 at the Multnomah Arts Center. You need to be a member to participate, but anyone can attend in this monthly in-person event. So thanks, everyone.
I do want to throw one thing out. If anybody has any further questions, feel free to contact me through my website. You know, just at any time, just feel free.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer emails or talk on the phone or whatever at any point.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much.